All right, from Alta View, we can come in, go to our main menu. There's a cross-launch option here into Alta View Reports. So the features that we're showing would work with any release of IT Analytics, Alta Analytics. So first place I usually suggest folks to begin to learn about the tool would be within our inventory tab. As soon as information is collected, we will see that information show up in the category organized around the left-hand pane. And this main screen has a modal window in the upper right that will flip between an overview and an inventory list. So I think of the inventory list as almost like a pseudo spreadsheet, and the inventory reports, particularly for new users, we suggest that they begin with. For any object as it's collected, we will get an overview for that. So in the case of this environment, where we have 9 backup servers that are known or have been known, we will see an overview for those. And you'll also note that there are additional tabs that I've added in here, and those have been added by going to the plus sign. And based on the object type that's selected here in the left-hand pane, IT Analytics will suggest other report templates that we could run. As an example, if we wanted to look at the Net Backup audit report, even when a tab is rendering for us, I still have access to click on other areas. So if I can let that work continue, we can start to get a sense of how through the inventory we can begin to show powerful features and functions. Backup primary server, the overview, will consist of these 3 major panes. It will give us a backup status, a job type count, and then a tabular backup executive summary. Worth noting that not only are there overt hyperlinks within IT Analytics, so for example, in here on November 29th, we logged a failure. If I wanted to go and look at that job directly, I can simply click on the hyperlink for it. I don't need to go back to the Net Backup console. I don't need to know anything more than I want to go and look at the information about that failed job. We see a job summary. I'm going to spend a minute or two here just talking about the depth of information that is available for Net Backup collection when you get into the job summary. And so we see all the standard kind of information that particularly an Ops Center customer would probably be looking for. Job ID client, the backup ID within Net Backup, policy name, and all the way through to an exit code, which of course in this case was 9999. Click the finish date hyperlink, and we're presented with job details. And I can see that additional details about why this was a failed job. Back within inventory, the other thing to be aware of is that most of our graphics are hyperlinked as well. If I want to rescale, for example, and look at celebrate all my successes, but focus in on warnings or failures, at this moment there are no warnings in this short date window of time. If I wanted to go look at my successes for a given point in time, I can simply, just as we did previously with the hyperlink for the tabular form, I can also hyperlink in to the bar chart, see the same information. For Net Backup in particular, you may, as you go through details, you might find that you're interested in looking at suppressing certain job types or potentially seeing job types that you were not finding in the out-of-the-box summary. To do that, particularly with job summary, or the scope selector for job summary, we can go in and choose advanced, and now we can see the job types that are automatically selected. For example, if I wanted to not see instant recovery jobs, or I wanted to see indexing or vault operations, archive, etc., you can see how I could turn those features on and off with the radio buttons. Go back to inventory, and we added in some additional tabs, including the audit report. One thing to be aware of with the inventory tab in particular is it's all based on a snapshot. So when I first log in, a snapshot is created for me, and if things change within the data set since that snapshot was created, I look for indicators in 2 locations. One is here, where I could simply refresh, and the other one that we'll very commonly see is also this icon, which tells us the latency of the information. I talked earlier about the fact that the left-hand pane controls what we see in the major right-hand pane, so we can actually see that quickly. If I look at the top level of all Net Backup servers, and I go to our summary, we can see we're getting a summation of 9 primaries, sum total of 300 and change jobs, and you can see the run rate for those over the last days. When I changed my focus down to an individual primary server, I don't need to do anything but now see that the majority of those jobs for the 9 are really coming from this primary server. If I want to look at the distribution for another primary server, you can see it's just as simple as changing my focus. One other thing that we typically will talk about within inventory is the fact that as we learn about hosts, whether those be backup clients or if we're doing additional collection from um, other other facets, if you're using different versions of IT analytics, um, we will see those hosts come summarized for us, and we introduce the notion of an attribute. So think of an attribute as a tag. It's literally a database column that we associate with a name. Column has a name, then you provide the valid values for that column. So simplistically, in this environment, we have 32 known hosts. We have an application name, an attribute called application name. 25 of our hosts carry an application name, and the happens that the 3 application names are represented in this environment are Oracle, SAP, and Splunk. And so what we're going to demonstrate visually by changing our focus here is that when I click on a particular application name, we will actually see that ripple into these top views. I'm going to spend my time with a great out-of-the-box template called Job Summary, and it's what I called a bread and butter report when I was a user of the tool as a customer. And the reason for that is you could get so much out of this single template. Like most backup reports, we have an ability to specify the time frame in which we are interested. So you'll see a large number of presets for us, last X hours, last X days, even an ability to do last year, number of years. And the other one that is typically going to be interesting if you're doing things like monthly operations reviews, et cetera, is you may want to go ahead and use some of the previous month, which would literally give us a summation of all, in this case, all jobs from the previous month. Sure. You do also within timeframes have the ability to go in, for example, for an audit and say, I want to go in and be very specific, potentially both date and time to specify a start and end date. For this purpose, I'm just going to do the last 24 hours, and we're going to talk quickly about, first of all, a couple of the key flags to be aware of. If you're looking for failed events or warning events, we saw how to grab those quickly within the inventory. But if you wanted to go through and see that same sort of summation from the job summary report, you can simply choose that job status of failed events. If I generate this point, we'll see failed jobs within the last 24 hours. There aren't any. So let's go 10. And as we'd expect, we're only seeing jobs that have failed in here. Same would be true for editing scope. Even though I've rendered the report, if I want to make changes to what I've asked for, simply click the edit scope button, pull back in, and say, for example, I want to transition to all events. And at the same time, perhaps I was interested in doing something like looking for a particular policy name, and an asterisk then would be a wild card. You can regenerate, see if we have any. So lots of, particularly with net backup output, as we look across here, you're seeing a tremendous depth of information around every job. And we have the kind of the bread and butter, job size and duration, what was the exit code, how many files did we protect, what were the primary and media servers. And then as we scroll to the right, we also expose information. If we're doing deduplication, which is occurring in these jobs, we can see the information job by job, whether it was client or server size, deduplication, what was our dedupe ratio, what was our CR sent, if accelerator was involved, and even further to the right, if we're doing HDR, TIR deduplication, we'd see that information. Before we talk further, I want to talk about scoping. Really within backup reports in particular, there's 4 mechanisms to scope. one of which is, as your group is set up, your domain, we will automatically group objects as they come in. And so all of these names that we see represented with like a screen icon or hosts that have been picked up through collection. We'll also automatically know as we interrogate each primary server, we know its clients and we know its policy. So if I wanted to see the clients that are associated with, there they are, et cetera, et cetera. So if I wanted to change my scope, for example, to limit myself to just the hosts, the clients that are first identified by that primary server, I can simply do that by either dragging and dropping, or I guess I'm a double clicker because that's how I brought it into scope. So to just kind of reinforce that, I go in, don't change anything except my backup server and regenerate. So in this case, we've got lots and lots of records that have been returned. That's fantastic. What we'll go ahead and do as well is shorten this time frame up, just to limit the number of rows in the next query, but also continue our discussion about scoping. We talked in inventory about attributes. When attributes have been set, we can actually take advantage of those to, rather than go through and explicitly put in lists of primary or of hosts, I can simply click on, for example, the application name of Oracle, and by default, simply by selecting that attribute, what's really going to be happening is all of these hosts are going to be included in the scope of our report based on that attribute value. So you can have any number of attributes, and as you can see, we suggest a number of those for starters, but you're welcome to add any to your own liking. And attributes are an incredible way to layer business intelligence on infrastructure objects that are collected through, in our case, NetBackup collection. So NetBackup knows the client names, it knows the primary server and the media server. It might or might not know, depending on whether you did, for example, policy tags or something in terms of your client naming convention. It might or might not have some ability to inference other business intelligence, but attributes are your, really effective way to bring in attributes and take advantage of layering that additional business intelligence and then being able to scope with precision around things like an application name of Oracle. So what does that do for us? Well, by setting our application name equals Oracle and regenerating, we're now changing our focus to say, not only are we going after particular, hosts, but we're precisely stating that we want those hosts to carry an attribute of application name Oracle. We see that in our scope summary here. Before I go much further, I'm out of order here a little bit, but let's talk about, we do this work of scoping, and at some stage we would like to save our output. So I'm going to demonstrate along the way here. We're going to call this a report called Oracle Jobs. And I'm going to save this in an area of the hollow folders under my reports. And I'll just put it in a video job summary folder. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to intentionally change our scope. And I'm going to go in and change our application name from Oracle. I'm going to go through and select one of the other application names. Now, important to note, these are, by default, these are OR conditions. So if I leave it as is, we would be saying the application name could be Oracle or Splunk. So if I really want to limit myself to just Splunk, I go ahead and adjust my mix to Splunk. I can now regenerate. And let's save that report. Call it Splunk in the same folder. Now, the significance of what we just did is that a single template, in our case, we were able to create very rapidly 2 different reports. And let's demonstrate that by I'm going to close all tabs. And I'm going to render our Oracle jobs. Notice when I run a report, there is the report definition included the template. It included any scope that I provided. And as we'll demonstrate in a minute or two, we can also do additional filtering. All of that is saved with the report definition. What's compelling here is that once we have these reports saved, and in my case, I'm representing potentially 2 different customers that would like to see output. To do that, I don't need to do anything more than scope correctly, and then I can set these things up for example, a scheduled distribution. So you can pick your output that you want to provide to the customer, put in the email address or addresses, and in the case of a schedule, and this is what I did for my customer base, I would send them the form desired, put in the distribution list for the application team, schedule it. Typically, I would go ahead and just use on a defined schedule of daily. I would go ahead and pick a time, usually 3 to 5 in the morning, say 4 a.m., and I would set that up as a scheduled report. Once I had done that, that report will automatically forever and ever be delivered until we ask it to stop. So one template generated at least 2 saved report versions. And we can see that if we go back to our job summary. I'm showing a different approach here of finding template names or report names by just starting to type a title or a keyword. And then I clicked on the all, and I can see that there are templates there's our base template called job summary. There's also our reports that we've saved. But what I'm really wanting to go to at this juncture is to go to job summary, which we find in that location. And particularly now that we've saved some reports based on that single template, look at the saved reports are found here under the reports column, and I can find the names of those reports. So multiple ways to find what we've done here. If I wanted to go and render our Splunk report, if I just remembered the name of it, as long as I click on the name of the report, it takes me to the location where that saved report has been created. I wanted to quickly demonstrate that key concept that all saved reports derive from their parent template, and that changes to that parent template will ripple into that report the next time it's run. This is a out of the report library report, and I've previously set up 2 instances of it. One of them based on our primary server that ends in v7, and the other variation of that, all based on the same SQL template, is the one that ends in v9. So when I run that report, those 2 reports, you can see they're different results, same columns, and of course the scope was different. So what we're going to do is intentionally go in and change the parent template for those 2 reports. And I'm going to make a very, very simple change to the parent template. I'm going to go in, I'm going to then customize it, and I'm going to turn on an additional column that was not displayed previously. You can see what it's called, rank. I'm going to save this, finish. So we've changed the parent template. Watch what happens now when we run the reports against that from that changed template. Notice the addition of that column. I could have had, in this case we had 2, I could have had scores of reports based on that parent template. As long as I want that change to appear in all saved instances, I simply change the template. So that's very powerful. Whatever changes you make to the parent template will be reflected in the reports without needing to go and touch those individual reports. Back to our job summary. Go back in there and close one more thought. We've talked about scoping parameters, and we've talked about the additional flags that we can throw, including being able to put in a policy name keyword. There's another concept that I want to certainly describe for you, which is as powerful as scoping can be and is. Particularly for tabular formed reports, there may be a case where you would, for example, say, well, that's great. I've got all these jobs and that's awesome. But I didn't see an ability to, for example, limit myself to only looking at hypothetic, for example, large jobs. So maybe I would only want to see jobs that are greater than 20 megabytes in size. You can do that. You can either right click within the main body of a rendered report, or you can go to the three dots in the upper right. Both will give you the same options. Choose filter. There's really two components to filtering here. First is to just suppress columns. So let's assume I don't want to show my customer before I distribute this. They don't need to know the backup ID and the job ID. And we'll turn off one more, just lifecycle policy. I can also be row centric about my filter. So remember, we talked about wanting to only display jobs where the megabyte size was, say, greater than or equal to 20 megabytes. It's that simple to go ahead and say that. We apply the filter once we're done. And in the case that I just set up, we should see two fewer columns, which we do, and we should see our jobs all meeting a 20 megabyte or greater size. They do. So as you can imagine, by being able to combine the power of scoping plus the additional leverage of filters, there's this one job summary template can produce a large number of extremely powerful outputs that are precisely tailored to what you might need. And I specifically showed the ability to suppress columns because it may be that everything you want is in this job summary report. You just don't want to distribute all that content. Make it simpler. For fewer columns, it's very, very easy to do that. All right, let's jump into continue to alerts then. All right, so alerts, there's three major pieces really to an alert. One of those is called the notification. So the alert notification is the action that will occur should an alert trigger. And in Alta Analytics, you have two choices, email or an SNMP trap. So an alert notification gets a name. So we could call this video demo. And that is whatever that means, whatever title that is, we're going to say that the email that we would want to have happen would be, say, sending to this somebody's name. Then the next piece, there's two kind of major categories of alerts. One of those is a large pool of what we call alert policies. Another name for this could have been alert templates, in the sense that for each of these categories that we see, you really get to specify rules behind it that help you to truly refine what's going to happen and what conditions make you refine the alert. So as an example, you'll see a large number of net backup prefixed alert rules that Ops Center users in particular will be very familiar. In many cases, these names are like for like. The way that you configure them will be a little bit different, but the titles are the same. So let's pick on one called catalog space low. Alert policy is just a title, my alert. And you probably would want to put something in, if you wish, catalog space. Symptom frequency, I should say, is one of the couple of efforts inside of these policy configurations to help reduce spam. So by default, every time that a condition that you specify within the alert condition is met, it would trigger the alert going out the door. You can see that there may be cases, for example, where you want to reduce jitter. It may be an event that flashes in the pan, and you really don't want to take any action unless you see, for example, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, or it may be a consecutive. If you put in a consecutive, then you would specify, for example, 3 times. If I don't see this alert fire 3 consecutive times or trigger, it's not gonna, no action will be taken. Again, every time is the default there. For many alerts, you actually have the ability to set a warning and a critical threshold. So in the case of catalog space low, we'll see in just a moment that I could have a warning alert go out to, for example, a notification rule called test. And if it gets to be critical, then it's going to go to my support team. The net email subject for these by default would match the rule. So if you don't set an email subject, if it were an alert rule, email would come out with a net backup catalog space low as a header. The other way to control spam is for checking for existing alerts. So this is a nice feature if you need to allow, or of course want to allow, for example, your hands and feet team to resolve an issue rather than just being continually bombarded with the notification that a problem exists. Check existing alerts will essentially say, if I've already sent a catalog space low alert, I won't do it. I will not send another one for whatever the look back hours are. So if we said, for example, we want to allow our team 24 hours to deal with most tickets, then that would be how we could make sure that we're not spamming them with constant messages of the same issue. Scope is where we would dictate for, the topic is catalog space low. We're going to specify what is the conditions for our catalog space low. We're going to specify what file where our catalog is retained. I'm just going to make up a path here. And as I add that query, we see these conditions being built. So we're saying all primary servers, in the case where the file system equals the USR location, then I can, that's my query, apply that. And then the other thing is our threshold. So I mentioned that you could have a different threshold for an alert trigger at a warning level versus a critical level. So we could go in and say, for example, if my available percentage is, let's see, less than or equal to 70%, I want a warning. And if it's 60%, it's correct. And if I had collected data, it even activate that option here, show a baseline of how we've trended over time. I don't have that in here, so it's not displayed. So that is the dialogue, an example of an alerting rule. We've talked about how to control spam, too much activity. Obviously, I would want to, if I'm ready to make this alert live, I would want to click the active option here and then save it. Going back to alert policy administration, just as a reminder, there are many, many rules. A couple of the ones that may not immediately jump out at you that are often asked about are particularly job finalized. How do I, when I see certain error conditions, status codes coming out of my jobs, how do I set those up for ticketing? And that would be job finalized. So to configure a job finalized, it's going to be familiar. Give it a name. You specify what happens if the alert triggers. And then what's interesting here is the scope. So you could specify based on product, of course, would be net backup. Job type could be, if you want to focus around a particular job type, you could put that into your criteria. You want to focus on only exit codes from a particular primary server or set of primary servers, that's great. And then you'll note the asterisk indicates something that's required is you have to specify at minimum what exit statuses you want to include or exclude from your alert. So a common one that you probably would be not equal to, i.e. don't send an alert, it's a 150. That would be something that your hands and feet operator has restarted. You don't need to notify them of an action they themselves took. So you can build these up. This list could also, in our options here, you can do is a member of. So if you wanted to put in a comma separated list of exit statuses that you want to be the basis of your alert, if you see those exit statuses, the alert would fire. You're welcome to do that as a member of, or in the inverse of that would be not a member of. So not a member of could be 150 plus any other exit statuses you wanted to not trigger an alert on. You'll find, particularly for op center users, many of these are going to be very, very familiar titles to you. Now, as rich as the primary alert policies are that we've provided here, there could be a case where we're just not giving you the visibility or the granularity that you really, really need for a very specific alert. And if that occurs, your other output or a capability in here is to generate any report that you could potentially craft out of IT analytics can be the basis of an alert. So the mechanism you've already seen previously, how to create a report. If I wanted for some reason to create an alert based on a saved report, I'm going to pick, for example, Oracle jobs. And, for this to be an interesting alert, we probably also want to make sure that they were failed Oracle jobs or something like that. But for purposes of just explanation, you'll note that one of the options that we have on a saved report is to make it an alert. And so the mechanism for a report-based alert is you indicate how frequently you want the check for the condition to occur. So, for example, we might say that I want to check for these Oracle jobs once a day at a certain time. Obviously, I could do it hourly or every minute, every so many minutes, etc. And similar to what we did before, we would also specify our opportunities for what do we want to have happen if, when that report check occurs, if rows are returned, what is the action or the outcome that we want to have happen. So very, very similar to what we saw under alert policies. The difference here is that you have the ability to craft and use any report you'd like. So what's cool there is we have lots and lots of great alerts, but if there's some specific condition, as long as you can craft a report that calls out that condition of interest, report-based alerts are your friend.
So to pick up where Ernie left off, we really just were touching on a single report here under management reports, and we were looking at job summary. But as you can see, there's a whole host of other reports that are available to you under the management reports. There's additional reports for media management, for managing SLAs, kind of more system administration type reports. So depending on the type of report that you want, there's several different high-level categories that they fall into. I'm going to stay with management reports because a lot of the ones that are very common, especially for doing dashboards, are kind of like high-level management reports. And really, that's what I'm going to take you through, is to go ahead and create some reports and then ultimately build a dashboard from that. Now, under my reports, you see when you first come into this, there's nothing there. Now, this is really kind of a place of folders where you're going to store your different report instances that you might have saved. So I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to just say right click and say new, and I'm going to call one of them dashboard components. Okay, so I just made a folder called dashboard components, and I'm going to make another folder, and I'm going to call it dashboards. So think of these as just like making folders to store things on your C drive. Now, I'm going to go back to my management reports, and we already know the job summary report, but the job status summary report is very similar, except it looks at more of a history and a summary of what went on. So I'm going to say last 14 days, I want to group it by day, and I want to basically scope it for everything. So let's just take all the defaults and then just run it. And what it will do is render a nice graph that shows me all of the backups, all of the jobs for every day, and it breaks them down into successes and failures. If I do want to focus in on the failures, I can just click on the footer here, and it will hide the successful ones. If I wanted to just see my warnings, and I have none that were just warnings. You can also zoom in on these things. If I select a chunk of those, I can actually zoom in on them. So there's a lot you can do with these graphs. They're fairly interactive. They are also drillable. So if I do want to see all of the failed backups that occurred on a particular day, I can just simply click on that, click open in new tab, and it will launch and drill in and show me all the failures that occurred for that particular day. So lots of flexibility there. Notice it did pop up a new tab here because I told it to. So let's go back to that report. That's my job status summary. And I like the way that I scoped it. Last 14 days works good. So I want to now save this. So I'm going to right click on the report, say save as, and I'm just going to call it job status summary, and I'm going to store it under dashboard components. So now let me close this out. And if I go to my dashboard components, you can see I've got a saved instance of that template with the parameters that I wanted for the last 14 days. And when I go to run it, I just click on it. It remembered everything that I selected from before and saved that instance of the template there. So this is key, because when you're creating a dashboard, you're going to be building it off of different reports, and each report can have its own scope associated with it. So let's go back to management reports to see if any other interesting reports here. So this error code looks interesting to me. So let's run that. And let's take the same, I'll do the last 14 days and just take everything and generate, and let's see what it looks like. Let's go ahead and take that and save it. And I'm going to call it job error code, and we're going to save it under dashboard components. And let's run another one. So back to management reports. Let's run a, I don't know, job volume summary. That will show us how much data is being backed up. And again, let's choose that last 14 days, run it against everything, group it by days, generate. And then there's all my backup volume. This is how much data I actually backed up on a daily basis across all those primary servers. And let's go ahead and save that. Job volume summary under dashboard components. So all I'm doing is I'm just basically running reports, scoping them out, and I'm saving them in this folder here. So now you can see I've got reports that are stacking up in that folder. One kind of anecdotal thing about this job volume report, if I scope this thing by, instead of by day, if I decide to do it by hours, and I look over the last 48 hours, it's a good way to tell what the activity is of my primary server. And so this is helpful if you wanted to see, maybe you need to stagger your schedule so that everything's not all trying to do everything at the same time. This is another variant of that. So let's take that and save that. And we're going to call it job volume, or let's call it like job activity. Okay. Now I'm going to go up here. I'm going to close all these tabs off, and then we're going to run those reports individually. So let's go to my dashboard components, and let's go ahead and run that guy, run this one, run that one, and that one. So I've got 4 reports queued up along the top here as tabs. Now, if I want to assemble these things into a dashboard, I just simply hit the plus sign right here and say create a new dashboard, or create dashboard. Now, what did it do? Nothing really. It just kind of brought up a blank palette that I can now put things on. So it created a new one called new dashboard, and let's take that job volume summary, and I'm just going to drag and drop it onto that blank palette. Let's take our job status summary. Now notice when I'm doing this, different parts will light up. So this will, or get darker. So if I want to put it beside it, I just put it there and then let go. Let's put our error code over here. And let's put our job activity up here. Okay. So I've taken reports that I saved, I've assembled them onto a dashboard, and now I'm going to take that dashboard, once I get it the way that I like it, right click, and we're going to save that dashboard. and I'm going to call it my backup overview. Let's go ahead and save that under our dashboards folder. Okay, so now, again, we're going to go up here. Let's close everything out. Go to my dashboards. There's my backup overview dashboard, and let's go ahead and run that. And it remembered everything that I did. So here's all my different components to that dashboard, and it behaves just like a report now. So if I want to take this dashboard and I want to email it to Ernie, I can simply go here and say, oh, I'll email it to myself. And I can have multiple formats. Now, this would look really bad in CSV format, so we're going to keep it in HTML or PDF format, are both very good for dashboards, but you definitely don't want to see a dashboard in CSV or text format. You have the option for live links, yes or no. What that is going to do is allow you to interact with it like I just did earlier. So that will allow you to drill in to those backup jobs. If you don't want somebody to drill in or get any further, you just set that to no. And then you could have it either as an embedded or an attachment. And let's go ahead and email that off now. So it's taken that dashboard and it's now on its way to me via email. The other options is I can export that. I can take that and again, go into either PDF or text format and go ahead and export that. This is just a handy way if you want to just take that dashboard and keep it off as a PDF file for future use. So there's PDF version of that. You have some other options if you to manipulate the layout a little bit. So I can right click and say I want to set the layout a little differently. Maybe I want to give less real estate to the top part, so I'll make that 200 pixels, and let's give those other 200 pixels to the lower one. I can suppress some of these headers, which will kind of clean it up a little bit. So you can manipulate it, and again, once you do that, you then want to save it so that next time you go to run it, it'll be there. Now, the other thing which is important is the scope selection is applicable to dashboards as well. So if I right click and hit edit scope, I don't have to run this dashboard for my whole organization. I can, if I wanted to run it using those groups that we set up like Oracle, I can go in here and select just a particular application. In this case, I want to select my SAP application, put that in the scope, and then this will re-execute, and you can apply that to either all of the templates or just one of the templates up here. Generate, and now that dashboard is rescoped for that particular application. So there's a lot of flexibility. You get the same type of flexibility when you're creating dashboards that you do when you're creating reports. For net backup users, they would want to see things like this, where they see the disk pool reports, so they can see the capacity of the disk pools and what percent used they are. We do have real-time reporting as well, so we can see what jobs are running. Simple net backup policies report. The list of the different policies, you can see how they're configured. You can basically drill into any one of these policies to get further information. So high level is a list, and then you can drill into any individual policy and it'll give you all the information about that particular policy. So the residence that it's going to be going into, when its effective date is, the path that's being specified in the policy, the clients that are members of that policy, when their last backup was, the backup windows, when that's going to be occurring. So it's a frequency-based schedule. It's going to go once a day. It's going to be retained for 14 days. So you got all the information about a backup policy by simply drilling in anywhere you see that hyperlink. This is my catalog policy. This is going once a week, being retained for 14 days. A lot of our customers do use this for some kind of chargeback or showback or shameback. So we can produce reports that will show and apply costs to those backups. So if you do want to see how much, and you can assign different costs per gigabyte for backups, and then you can produce these kind of showback reports, which show them based on their usage, how much backup cost is associated with that. So the net backup audit report is another important report because it shows you everything that happens within that backup. So you give it a time frame like any other, and then this will go back and tell you everything that happened. Now there's different categories that are part of this. So if you wanted to see like changes that occurred to policies, you could select that, a particular category. Let's look at all things and against all users. Let's generate. So it tells you who did it, what they did, when they did it. So you can see on this particular primary server, you can see the description of the event, the user that did it, what they did, and if there were any changes to any attribute, you would see that. So if somebody did add a policy, that would be here. In this case, it looks like most of the people are just logging in, but there is a hyperlink which will tell you this person tried to log in and they got a failure 5 times. So you can actually see that that person had difficulty logging in. So accessed, logged in. Let's see if we had any that are policy related. Yeah, so on this date, somebody deleted a backup policy. Delete, created a policy. So you have full logging capabilities. You can also, this would be an interesting one to set up as an alert. So you could, again, right click, set that as alert. If you do want to get a daily report that is showing, okay, what in my environment changed last night. If there were any changes to a policy in the last 24 hours, you could have it send you an email, let you know, hey, somebody changed something, and maybe there was no change request associated with that. You can search for reports, so it's fully searchable. So if you're not sure where something is, you can put in any report name here, and it'll show you all the reports that match that. So backup executive summary as an example. Let's go ahead and run that. I think we have just over 300 out-of-the-box reports. So between all these different categories, there's a lot of different reports that are available.
A site worth being aware of is Veritas library, and its URL is reportlibrary.veritas.com. In the screen that we're seeing, I've gone to that URL. So what this does is augments all of the out-of-the-box templates that come with either Alta View reports or IT Analytics, and there are variations in different reports that are available for your use here. The left-hand pane does allow some organization around broad categories. The main one that I would point out is that for IT Analytics or Alta View users that are running 11.2 and higher, we've enforced a capability for security that you'll want to choose signed templates. If you uncheck that, you'll note that in many cases we've got both the old form, the unsigned template, and the plus sign indicates a signed template version of really what should be the same report. So probably want to go ahead and click that. That'll also minimize the list of options from duplication. Then the other thing to be aware of is that across IT Analytics Complete Suite, we can cover all of these categories, but for Net Backup users in particular, you want to undoubtedly check Backup Manager General, which would mean these templates would work with any backup vendor, including Net Backup. And then you'll also want to check the additional Veritas Net Backup category, which will bring in a rich range of additional templates for you that are Net Backup specific. And finally, if you want, you can do keyword search in here. So if you were looking for something, for example, around with a keyword of dedupe or similar, I could type that in and click search, and I will see variations of titles. In this case, then the other thing that I really enjoy about the report library is when I click on a report name here in the middle, I see a sample output provided to me. The last thing that we can mention in this example is that you'll often see a discussion where the same report name will be included, one with a CL and one with an MS. And the difference in those has to do with the way that the report will handle scoping. So if the report is indicated with an MS, if you put in a master server name, only those master servers that are selected will be included in the scope of the report. If you put in a CL, Even if you specify, for example, a single primary server, what will happen is what really happens with a CL, and that's the standard scoping, is that the list of clients known by that primary server are passed into the report scope, and then any jobs for that list of clients will appear. So the key consideration there is that there may be cases where that client may be known or managed by more than one primary server. And when that happens, you'll see the jobs for that client from any and all primary servers. So a subtle but important distinction. Hopefully that helps you to understand a little bit about it. If I were to say, for example, that I'd like to see that report and bring it in to use within my instance of either AltaView reports or IT Analytics, then I can simply download the RTD. If I want to download a template to use within the application, I can simply choose Download RTD. My download dialog is displaying on my other screen, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. So switching back to our AltaView report space, what we will do is go into a My Reports folder, and then we would, for example, create a folder or put in an existing folder, and then we can choose Import. At that point, we're offered the opportunity to browse to the RTD file that we just created. I believe I put it in here. There's the template that we just downloaded from the report library. As long as it was signed, which it is, I can click OK, and that template is now going to appear inside our environment. Now, immediately, that template is usable. So just like any other template within the engine, if I want to select it to run it, of course, we can do that. Just do the last 7 days, and we'll change our values to gigabytes and generate. And there's our results. So again, as normal, at this stage, this template is ours to use, to work with, and just as significantly, we have the ability to go and extend it if we chose. So as you become more comfortable with the tool, if you want to see how things are put together and potentially even optimize or change a template, you're welcome to do so. Anything that's a SQL template type, you can choose the customize option. That'll be presented to you. You will be able to see scoping parameters and the query as it's put together. And inside the query, this is a great way to learn, by the way, how to write your own reports, but also you can see nothing obscured. You can see the logic that was used to produce the output you like. So the report library is yours to take advantage of. It's an excellent resource.